Can you just explain what essentially your arguments are on the constitutionality of the executive order?
You bet. There are multiple, but I'll keep it very short and brief in the interest of time. So we have a variety of constitutional arguments that include, for example, violations of due process, equal protection, violation of the First Amendment Establishment Clause in relation to religion. So we have a bucket of constitutional claims that were discussed in court today. In addition, we allege violations of statutes like, they may sound technical, but the Administrative Procedures Act. Well, that's not technical. For example, President Obama's the Dreamers Act that he put into place was shut down because of a claim based on that act, for example, when Republican AGs sued the Obama administration. So we have two different buckets of claims, and the judge felt we were likely to prevail on the merits when he ultimately decides on that, and that was part of why he granted our temporary restraining order this evening. So
does, this is a dumb question, but does your case then continue in front of this judge?
No, it's not a dumb question at all, Anderson. This can be a little bit confusing. So yes, eventually the judge will reach what we call the merits, make a final decision. But I think it's fair to say, most lawyers would say that if a judge grants you that temporary restraining order, because one of the requirements to do it is the judge concluding that you are likely to prevail ultimately on the merits, that bodes well for our case, as you might imagine. I just want to say, look, it's, in a courtroom, it is not the loudest voice that prevails, Anderson. It's the Constitution. And Judge Robart is an appointee of George W. Bush, and he took the, extraordinary step of granting a TRO to shut down implementation of this executive order because of the adverse impact to people in my state. Attorneys have been in my office around the clock for 6 days to make this happen. So, as a lawyer, it's why you go to law school, right? To do something that benefits the people you serve, and that upholds the rule of law and the Constitution. So, to say it was the best day of my professional life would be an understatement.
The manifest and unjustifiable chaos and cruelty caused by President Trump's executive order is now on full display here at SeaTac Airport. It is religious discrimination in its barest and obvious form. Not only did it target just Muslim countries, it clearly is religiously discriminatory when the president himself said, we're going to say Muslims are at the bottom of the barrel, other religions are at the top. We have never done this in over 2 centuries of American history, and it's on display here at SeaTac. And we're drawing the line right here at SeaTac. And I hope people are doing it in airports across the country. Listen, I've seen this movie. When I got a call 2 hours ago about what was going on at our airport, I thought about the history of Bainbridge Island. I live on Bainbridge Island. 75 years ago, we saw this movie again, where because of fear, the American government issued another executive order in February 1942 that rounded up American citizens who were of Japanese-American ancestry because of fear and only fear, and sent them to camps for years. I know from Bainbridge Island what fear can do, and I know that Americans need to stand up against this today across America.
President tomorrow. The candidate is about to take the stage in a rally in Washington State tonight. We're monitoring that for you. And election results are coming in for hard-fought primaries in Arizona and Florida. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. We're keeping an eye on a lot of things at Trump rally for you, of course. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton faces the release of the FBI's report on her emails as soon as tomorrow. Again, following a lot here for you. Plus, polls just closing now in Arizona, where Senator John McCain says he is in the race of his political life. And in Florida, Senator Marco Rubio wins the GOP nomination, as former DNC honcho Debbie Wasserman Schultz is projected to win her Florida Democratic primary. Boy, a lot going on this evening. CNN's Phil Mattingly is with us from the Trump campaign in Washington State. Manu Raju is in Kissimmee, Florida. Mr. Mark Preston is here. Jeff Zelny as well with me in New York. Gentlemen, I'm so glad you're here tonight because we have so much coming in. Mark, I'm going to begin with you. the latest developments now that Trump's immigration speech tomorrow, a possible meeting with Mexico's president. What do you know about that?
Well, you couldn't make this up, right? I mean, this is
like The Apprentice.
This is like The Apprentice. So, what we've been told, and a story we should say first reported by the Washington Post about an hour ago, is that, and we've since confirmed that Donald Trump's campaign is currently considering going down to Mexico City tomorrow and meeting with the president down there. This was an invitation that was extended by the president of Mexico a week ago to Hillary Clinton as well as Donald Trump. And there is some talk now within the Trump campaign that this would be a good leadoff before heading on to Arizona to give the immigration speech.
Okay, a very quick turnaround. These trips take, they will take a while. So the while to set up. So how did they set this up? What's going on? What the Washington Post is reporting. But how do they set this up?
Well, logistically, it is a nightmare, and it's my understanding that the Secret Service is in knots right now trying to figure out if we are going to get him down there, how are we going to get him down there, what is going to be the safest route to get him to the location that's under consideration. There's an incredible logistical nightmare. He's out in Washington State. There's a good chance you will not see the U.S. National Press Corps traveling with Donald Trump. You need a passport to go, when you go over the border. Probably many of these reporters don't even have their passports.
Let's bring Phil in. Phil, you're with the Trump campaign, this rally in Washington State tonight. What are you hearing, if anything, about this?
Well, the passports are clearly an issue right now, Don. But look, one of the key issues here, and I think Mark kind of laid out the outlines of it, but the Trump campaign has made no secret. Tomorrow's speech on immigration is extremely important, a crucial moment for the campaign, and they are multiplying that by about 10 with the news that they're considering this visit. Now, a couple things that I've heard just in passing over the last 20 or 30 minutes or so from talking to Trump advisors, Don, there were some serious internal deliberations on this, and not everybody inside the Trump campaign is thrilled with this idea, but it is one, as Mark noted, that they are very strongly considering right now. One, I'm told Donald Trump personally is leaning towards are components that President Peña Nieto hasn't necessarily agreed to publicly. So there's an optics issue here, there's the politics issue here, and then there's the logistical issue. All of these things are kind of in the works right now as they try and figure this out, Don.
Hey, Jeff, you've been covering the Clinton campaign, and here's a statement. This is from the Mexican president, Enrique Peña Nieto, his office tonight, and it reads in part, last Friday, the president sent invitations to both candidates, which were well received by both of the team's campaigns. There is no confirmation of meetings at this point. Any word on plans if the Hillary Clinton campaign plans to make the same trip, if these trips are indeed going to happen?
As of now, no. There has been a discussion about should Hillary Clinton take a foreign trip as a presidential candidate or not. And as recently as the last several days or so, her advisors are leaning no, because she has the foreign policy experience. Secretary of State and her time as in the Senate as well in the Armed Services Committee. She knows the world leaders know her. So until this moment, no, she's not. Now, is that clad in stone? No, probably not. If Donald Trump would indeed go to Mexico, could she follow at some point? Perhaps she could. But I think that this is another example. Boy, we have been pinging back and forth on his immigration policy for the last 10 days or so. This would really be the cherry on top of all of this if he would go to Mexico before his speech in Arizona. I'm not sure how his base would react to that. It would be perhaps a Sister Souljah-like moment of this campaign. Right. So we are not making any predictions. We've learned in this campaign to not do that. But the Clinton campaign, I think, is going to follow their own heart and guide on this and not follow what Donald Trump is doing. So she certainly could be lured into it, but at this point, I was told as recently as last week, no foreign trips on their docket.
This could be, to both of you, but Mark, I think you're best suited to answer this. This could be a really awkward conversation, seeing how Donald Trump launched his campaign. Let's take a look back.
They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
He said, Sister Souljah, this could be a really awkward conversation.
It could, but you and I have had this conversation at this table. The three of us have had this conversation at this table. Donald Trump in person is very likable, right? I mean, he's very conversational. It will be interesting to see if these two men actually sit across from each other and how that conversation ensues. I think what's important to know, his supporters are probably going to be supportive of him doing this. However, he does risk stepping on his message tomorrow night. He does risk the idea of the Mexican president coming out right after this meeting, as assuming he goes, as he's taking off, saying, we're not going to pay for that wall, and everything that happened in that meeting, is all guff, let's say. And then he steps on his message that Donald Trump is then going to Phoenix, where we were going to focus on tomorrow.
Especially, it's been a one-way conversation at this point, Donald Trump, about the Mexican government, what they're going to do. If he makes this a two-way conversation and gets some input from the Mexican
seems like
president,
it may seem like a negotiation.
And they're going to say, no, we're not paying for the wall.
Right.
So that is going to inject a bit of reality here into what has simply been a campaign promise. That could be one of the reasons that we'll see if this comes off at the end of the day. Yes, they're talking about it right now. We'll see if this happens 24 hours from now if he's in Mexico City.
What could he say new at this meeting? What could come out of this meeting? I mean, so much. I know that's a broad question, but
you really want to put me on that spot. I mean, as Jeff said, we can't make predictions. Listen, I think that no matter what, let's assume that he does go, because it is under serious consideration, and there's a good chance that it does happen. I think that Donald Trump is going to come out and say that it was a very gracious meeting. We had a good dialogue, and they're still going to pay for the wall. I think no matter what happens, that is exactly what's going to come out of it. However, the Mexican president, as Jeff says, has now been interjected into the conversation with him, and that in itself is dangerous.
But regardless, this is a continuation of a shift in Donald Trump's campaign where they are being open and being
competitive primary battles for us tonight, all of these battles tonight. John McCain in Arizona, Marco Rubio, Debbie Wasserman.
Well, Don, actually, the Florida Senate race did not really turn out to be that competitive here in this primary. Marco Rubio winning with more than 70% of the vote against a businessman named Carlos Barruf. Remember when Marco Rubio dropped out of the presidential race after losing this state by nearly 20 points to Donald Trump? He said that he was going to retire. He's going to be done with the Senate. But instead, he was lobbied aggressively by Republican leaders, Mitch McConnell on down, urging him to get into this race because they believed he was the one person who could win and save the Senate seat. And as a result, all the other Republican challengers dropped out of this race. Now, Rubio, just speaking to supporters here, had a chance to talk about what he called a, quote, unusual way he got back into the Senate race.
This has been an unusual road back here with you tonight. As you know, after my race ended in March for the presidency, I was prepared to become a private citizen. And I was not just prepared to be so, but I was excited about what that meant.